So we move on then to the characters, because you could get a question on characters, and this is probably going to be the longest part of this video, but it is well worth remembering when you actually come to planning your essays. So George is seen as caring to Lenny. He obviously has a dream himself. He gets annoyed quite quickly and thinks about another life when he's looking after Lenny. He's smart because he actually dictates all of Lenny's movements and makes sure that he's got a plan B, so Lenny knows to go to the brush. He's cautious when he actually meets Curly for the first time, and he knows it's not going to be something very good for him, and cautious also over Curly's wife. He's needy at times as well, and we can see that in the times that he actually hangs around with Slim, and the conversation he actually has with Slim is kind of, it's not like how he talks to anyone else. So obviously we know he has a need as that, and it's not being, the friendship need anyway, is not being satisfied through Lenny. We know he can do the right thing even though it's difficult. Obviously he has to shoot his friend, and obviously he goes through the idea of losing a friend, or maybe it's a burden. Obviously that's open to interpretation. And then at the end, and this is another actually rendition of how it could be, he actually finds a soulmate. So obviously that's down to interpretation. Moving on to Lenny then, obviously Lenny's got a really weak mind, and it's actually shown by the fact he can't remember anything. Obviously he's in for the dream, and this really means a lot to him, and you can actually pick that up from the repetition of how many times George actually says it to him, and how many times he wants George to say it to him. He's got a very strong body. You can see that the way he actually bucks Barley, and the way he obviously crushes Curly's hand. He doesn't understand some very simple things with regards to remembering when to talk, when not to talk, etc. And obviously that's a huge problem for him. He's attracted easily to pretty things and soft things, etc. Obviously just like a child, and obviously that represents his baby-like qualities. He needs George desperately, even though he has some sense of pride at one point when he actually says, I'll go off and live in the mountains. And maybe also this is quite a sad thing, because he actually knows it's a bad place for him. He actually tries to get out of it. He says to George, this is a bad place, when he actually first sees Curly. He wants to go, but then George kind of doesn't go with it, obviously because they need the money, etc. So in this kind of, it's like a really small white flag being waved there by Lenny. He wanted to get out before all this happened, but nothing, fate obviously was going to conspire against them. He loves the simple things, as mentioned again, and obviously that gets him into trouble with the hair, and he's a killer, an accidental killer all the way through, but a killer nonetheless, and obviously that's been signposted the whole way, so there's a lot to mention about him there. Curly's angry, obviously. We see this from the way he's always stomping around looking for people. He's violent. Obviously we know this because he saves one of his hands for his wife, which is probably a reference to slapping. He's not really a man, and obviously that's an interpretation really, because obviously he's still living at his parents' place. Basically he doesn't know how to treat his wife properly. He doesn't actually know how to communicate properly with other people, not like Slim does, and maybe he's jealous of a lot of other people, and that's kind of in the shadows of those people. So he's in the shadows of Lenny strength-wise, and he's in the shadow of Slim in terms of authority, and obviously in the shadow of his father in terms of making something of himself. He gets his comeuppance when his hand is broken, etc. And obviously he gets his comeuppance through the way that his wife actually treats him. She's never around when he's around. Whenever you do see them there, they're always kind of arguing. Preys on the weak often. Obviously he tries to do that by putting making people scared, and obviously that comes through when he tries it with Carlson, tries it with Slim, obviously tries it with George, and then obviously tries it with Lenny, to the detrimental effect. Curly's wife, she's one of the probably more important characters. Obviously she's got no name for herself, which says a lot about women at the time. She's lonely, she's pretty, obviously that's highlighted quite a lot, and it's a bad combination probably in this era of literature. She's dangerous. The way she's spoken about, that's always good. If you mention anything about Curly's wife, mention how she's spoken about by the other characters, because it's not positive. Is she misunderstood? Is she just lonely? Would she be, if she were in a better place, would she be a better person? Is she doing what she needs to survive? These are the kind of things you can ask yourself. She's very simple, obviously, and foolish for the fact that she actually pursues other people's attention when she's supposed to be married, which is obviously only going to get her into trouble, especially knowing what her husband's like, and she says knowingly he's not a nice man. She's silently regretful, obviously. She kind of comments when she's telling Lenny about her life, etc., and saying what she could have been. Obviously there's a lot of regret in there, but obviously she's not saying she actually regrets it, but obviously we understand that. Is she innocent, or does she deserve her death? Obviously that's again for you to decide, and it's always worth mentioning both aspects if it comes up in an essay. And she's ill remembered. That's actually quite sad. I mean, her husband doesn't really care. He just wants to go after the killer because he just wants to kill Lenny, but then Candy, when standing over her, he really just has a go at a dead body, and that's actually quite sad. So she's actually ill remembered at the end there. Now with Crooks, Crooks obviously represents the black contingent, but it's not really a story about racism, and Crooks in himself, he's just kind of this small like side area within the novel, but he's actually got one kind of strange redeeming quality, which was not a quality of his character, but in the book he's actually guaranteed a job. He's the blacksmith there. He actually makes the shoes for the horses. If he doesn't have those, the horses can't go out, no one else can work, so his job is kind of guaranteed, and maybe that's not kind of seen as enough of a strength, but also that can be his a prison for him as well in that sense. He's obviously in pain. He takes his medication, but he knows what he's doing with his medication and ointments, etc. He's very smart. He's probably one of the few people there that can read, but obviously he's the outcast in his bunkhouse. He's had bad experiences where people have tried to fight him before, and obviously they only invited him in to mock him one Christmas a few Christmases ago. His slim hope of actually being part of something is actually dashed when obviously Curly's wife comes in, and Curly's wife ends the dream, and then he just quickly shakes that back. And that's actually another interesting thing about Curly's wife. She ends the dream literally for Lenny and George and Candy, but then she ends the dream in another way for Crooks, just by reminding him of his position. He feels threatened, obviously, just even by the idea. He doesn't really understand Lenny's intentions, and obviously he's threatened by Curly's wife, and he's a visited character. We touch upon him, and we just kind of go to him just to kind of hear this one aspect and come back. He's not really one of the threads of the novel, as it were, but obviously he's one of the most memorable. So then we come on to Candy. Obviously he's very likeable at the beginning, obviously very friendly to George and very helpful, and obviously he's got similarities to his dog. Obviously his dog's mangy and old and decrepit, and so is he, and basically you can actually see the dog as a metaphor for him and how his life's actually going to be shaped. He's lonely, and then he's bereaved in some ways because of his dog when it's actually taken away from him, and then he goes into this catatonic state where he just kind of lays on the bed for ages, and then he's offered this hope that he actually overhears, and then the world is just brightness again. And that's actually a really interesting concept. It's just these ideas, and obviously the American dream is probably all about just an idea, but it's when everyone's offered these ideas, that's actually what makes them feel that they can do and achieve and actually stretch and go somewhere. And it's just nothing actually changes very much from when he's offered this hope to when the hope is dashed, but obviously the way they can talk about it's gone now. In fact, if you wanted to look at it another way, it's actually quite a happy ending. George loses Lenny, loses his burden. He finds a good friend in Slim. Candy still got his money, still obviously got the opportunity of the ranch. So there is that way of reading it, but I think people will call you quite cynical if you try to just wipe over Lenny that way. He feels included when he actually makes those two friends, so they're kind of like a triplet then. He finds the body, and it's really important that he actually finds the body, because there's not many other characters that could have found the body that would actually give us the space and time to go with what we wanted, to get a reaction, an honest reaction about the breakdown of the dream, and obviously then something that actually goes and allows Lenny to be killed in a humane question mark way. And obviously he has his hopes dashed when he finds the body. And lastly then we got Slim. Slim is obviously godlike. He's in control the whole way through, and there's no one else that's written about the way Slim is. Slim is only written about favourably, and maybe this is kind of like a hero-like figure. It'd be interesting actually if you find out who Slim is based on, or who Steinbeck was actually thinking of, etc. He's knowledgeable at all times. He reassures people when there's actually troubles, and he asserts himself. I mean, he asserts himself basically. It's kind of his nod or his kind of say-so that allows for the dog to be killed, etc., etc. And obviously the stable hands are all listening to his instructions when they're actually out working. Now at the other end of the spectrum on the barn on the farm from Crooks, he's got a guaranteed job as well, and obviously that makes him very important, and obviously they maybe have a mutual respect for each other, and we do see them kind of interact with each other with respect. And obviously at the end we end up a place where obviously he reassures again, and maybe has he found the friend he's looking for now in George, and has George found the friend in him? So if you find quotations for any of those, you're going to be well ahead of what you want to be doing, how you want to be doing in terms of grades, and when you come to writing your points, I mean the best advice I can offer you is obviously look at the examples that are there, but basically if you do this you're not going to go far wrong. Plan, so obviously just try and remember some of the items that we've discussed here. When you come to your essay, mention a point, give a quotation, and then explain the meaning of that quotation and analyze it. Now there's several things you can analyze. Analyze some of the language, or analyze a link that could be made to another character. Analyze one of the ideas or themes, so that's the things that are actually mentioned up the top here. Any one of them, try and get them in each one of your paragraph. A different one obviously is better. And also look at how it links to another point in the book somehow, because there's lots of kind of connections to be made here. And do this obviously as much as you can. But if you do it 4 or 5 times, I can't see any reason why you would get less than a very good grade. Good luck.